Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. You're watching The Future is Female. This is the show where we want to find the extraordinary in every woman. I'm delighted to introduce my guest today, Suraya Zainuddin. She is a financial activist and founder of the personal finance website Ringgit or Ringgit. She's also the author of the recently published book Bergaji dan Pokai, which aims to provide practical advice to build a stress-free life through realistic money management. Welcome to the show, Suraya. Thank you so much for joining me. It's so good to be able to chat to you today.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for having me. It's nice to be here.
Well, we've had you on other shows on AWANI before, and we've interviewed you about issues of the economy and of personal finance. But I would love to discover a little bit about how you started this journey to personal finance. What inspired you to become a financial activist and to start Ringgit or Ringgit?
I will address the financial activist part first.
Okay.
To give credit to Majalah Labo here, they were promoting me in one of their articles, and they referred to me as activist kewangan, and I really liked the term, and I started calling myself that, and I really thought it was fitting. Before this career, I was working in the social services line. I was working in the NGOs. I was working at an international women's rights organization before I became a content creator. So that part stuck to me. I don't just want to be a personal finance content creator, but also someone who fights for, advocates for, financial knowledge, personal
Yeah,
finance knowledge.
I like that. So I had never come across the term financial activist before. I really like it too. But how would you define it? If you, I mean, it clearly means a lot to you. How do you identify as a financial activist? What does that mean for you?
Yes, financial activist is someone who also acknowledges the environmental factors, the structural factors that results in someone's financial situation. So there is no sort of like, how it is in personal finance world sometimes, in the financial world sometimes. I don't know if you notice this, but some of the financial advice, and there are many out there, it can be a little bit, there's a little bit of like a blame game thing going on. Like if you don't, if you are poor, that must means you are not working hard enough. It's your it's that we blame you. Why did you fall into scams? Why do you not use your credit card properly? So I want to also bring in this conversation of this environmental factors that resulted in these kind of things, putting into context that the poverty, the fact that, the role of marketing and advertising that encourages people to spend more than they can afford, these all kind of things that, results in the financial situation that a person can be in, therefore, financial activists.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I 100% agree with you. The fact that sometimes there can be a lot of blame and shame placed onto the user, right? So when you mention scams, that's a huge element, and there is also this thinking that, this mindset that, you're poor because you've managed your money so poorly, you've made bad financial decisions. What are you hoping to achieve through your work, Suraya?
I hope to achieve two things. And I mentioned just now about how some of the personal finance discussion, advice out there can be a bit, blame game. We call this classist type of personal finance conversation. It blames you for being poor, the one that goes like, no money, why didn't you work more? Why didn't you save more? Why you gonna scam? So they, people who advocate for this kind of advice, they tend to perpetuate this myth that rich people are rich because they make good decisions, and poor people are poor because they make bad decisions. And this is absolutely false. We are all products of our environment. Of course, there's also, I'm referring to this one study, 40 researchers. They studied 5,000 participants across 27 countries, and they found no differences in bias patterns for financial decisions between income groups. So when you say no differences, what you're saying is that rather than saying poor people make bad decisions, we have to say rich people also make bad decisions. It's just that they have the financial cushion to get them out of their mess. And unfortunately, poor people cannot afford to make some good decisions. So yes, now I want to achieve part of the thing that I want to achieve in my work is for my content to be intentionally mindful and just avoid this kind of like blaming type of language. And the second thing that I want to achieve is that I love that I'm a visible Malay woman in the space. When I first started out, there was barely anyone, let alone women, let alone Malay women. And happily, I'm happy to report that there's a lot more now. If you go on social media, and we're not talking about the financial guru types, right? We're just talking about like everyday people, not necessarily from the financial line, not necessarily people who are in the property sector or unit trust sector or insurance sector, just everyday people, just taking charge of their own personal finance, personalizing their decisions in a way that works for them, and just sharing the journey with others. Just
Yeah.
so people can see, yeah, I manage my own money, and there's power in that.
You've made it less scary. I know for so many people who follow you, financial decisions, financial management can often feel so, as you said, elitist. It can feel so exclusive. So the rest of us feel a bit scared and daunted to to take charge of our personal finances. This book that you've just written and published, Bergaji dan Pokai, can you tell me a little bit about it? And what was it that you discovered, Suraya, in the process of writing this book? Because surely you must have thought about what was you wanted to address, and that means that you had to think about the gaps in our financial literacy. What did you discover?
Yes, thank you so much. The full title is Bergaji dan Pokai, Membina Kehidupan Bebas Tekanan Melalui Pengurusan Kewangan yang Realistik. So you can see it's quite long. We just call it Bergaji and Pokai. It's published by Iman Publication, amazing company. Please do support them. I believe that a lot of their work is now in the top 10 list in MPH in bookstores. You can find their books. I would say, Melissa, that one of the most common feedback that I get from my book is how easy it is to understand, for money management, to understand and to practice. And because I'm not someone who usually likes to pen my own bag, I just read this one review that I found on Goodreads. Credit to user Farahin. She says that the author, she's been a reader of Ringgit or Ringgit.com. She says that she's grateful that she picked up a personal finance book that is filled with empathy, down to earth practical tips, and none of the hard selling, guilt tripping language a lot of finance books adopt. It's validating and motivating, but also realistic. So I think that here this person is addressing the fact that many financial books, even though someone is motivated to learn, is daunting, like you said, and also maybe a little bit hard selling slash guilt tripping. So it makes
Mm.
I'm not good enough instead of feeling empowered. And you're absolutely right when you say that it's daunting. I think most people think finance is this big, hard, complicated thing. And yes, we know that it can be, and we know that, like, goodness, there's just so many jargon in the space. But and I think for most people when they first start out, they were told that saving money is important, investing money is important, you should do it now. Estate planning is important, you should do it now. Insurance is important, you should do it now. So that kind of messaging is like you just end up analysis paralysis, do nothing, right?
Right.
So in Bagaji and Pokai, I break it down step by step. I explain which one you need to do first. So by having that, okay, you do this one first and then you think of investing. This one comes first, this one comes second. And I'm not even blaming the jargon here because I know that preciseness of language, it does matter for sure. But as a content creator, you have to meet where the audience is at. And then you
Mm.
break it down in language that they can understand. And I hope that I've done that through my work.
And did you find, in speaking to people, I really like that review, by the way. Guilt tripping and hard selling is prevalent in the world of personal finance. But when you speak to people in the process of writing this book, what was it that you found you really wanted to correct in terms of misconceptions or myths about personal finance? You talked about making it easier. Was there anything else that you noticed?
Yes, I noticed that people think of personal finance as this absolutely rational decisions. I found that with the audience, you just have to admit that, yeah, money evokes really strong emotions in people, and there's no way that you can make 100% pure rational decisions about money. And just for the pure fact that money means differently to you and I. For some people it means safety, for others it means prestige, for others it means power, and we can't really assume that my worldview of money is the same for you, is the same for everyone else. It's not the same with our partners, not the same with our family and friends. So I guess through, through all these interactions, I have really discovered, and it's really like the most humbling thing, like I've really discovered the part of, progressing through personal finance is also personal growth in your own mindset. It's accepting that you are an irrational human being. You are someone who will make mistakes. So put, measures to not just expect but also like a buffer, so that those mistakes don't define you as a person. And I guess even now I'm more than happy to admit I don't have it all figured out. I still make bad money decisions, but the point is to share this openly in my
Mm.
work, share all these mistakes, because we have all this situation where, like, sometimes not all, where people sort of, like, I earn X amount of money, or I have this amount of money, and you know i- they are simplifying it to the point where you don't see that that it takes a lot to be to that level. And oh god, I'll just put it
Yeah.
in context, right?
w-
Let's say
w-
wedding. Let's say wedding.
Right.
Most, like, if you ask many people, they will probably say, yeah, weddings are expensive, we want a smaller wedding, right? It's a very common thing to say. But it's so easy for your parents, or for your family, or for your friends to pressure you into a bigger one. For one thing, it's easy for the wedding industry, bless them. No, no, no,
No, hey.
just an
Mm.
example. No, bless them, but it's so easy to upsell, right? You might go in with okay, 30,000 ringgit package, and then they say, oh, take this one, or you want to upgrade this one, it tastes better, this one is more beautiful, and then you end up with a 50K plan, for example. um and when you can't afford the bigger amount, sometimes family, your parents, for example, might help out. And it's very common to see this. And out of love, they might use their EPF savings meant for retirement to fund for the wedding. And these are all due to, social expectations. So we talk a lot about, like, the emotional part of it. Yeah, let's address it. And let's not just say, oh, someone finishes their whole, like, EPF savings of savings because they don't know how to manage their money well. We'll just acknowledge that there's all this pressure, so maybe we can, like, expect, manage it a little bit better, or put a little bit of like a boundary setting, we call it in this world, so
Right.
you don't spend more than what you hope you spend on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, money is so emotive, isn't it? It's tied to so many emotions. We often think of money as this kind of like cold hard cash, they call it, right? But actually, it's really tied into into what makes us very human. And ironically, it is one of the hardest things to talk about. So many of us struggle to talk about money, to ourselves, acknowledging how we spend, and also to talk to about the people, to talk about money with the people around us, especially in a partnership or in a marriage and family. I wanna ask you how to develop healthy relationships with money. How important is open communication when it comes to managing money in relationships, and how do you reconcile that? Sometimes what happens is that family members or loved ones have different spending habits, have different financial priorities. How do you find a balance that works for all?
Right. Again, I still make so many mistakes. And I don't claim to have all of the answers. I can only share what people have shared to me, or even from my own personal experience. But overall, generally speaking, you can't change other people's behaviors, unfortunately. You can only lead by example, and you can't really tell people what to do. By leading by example just means that you yourself, if your family or your partner is a spendthrift, for example, then you are the one who would be the one to balance that out and be the frugal one, to be the one who puts a stopgap to, like, okay, maybe we should hold on first, or maybe we should, think of, oh, there's other spending, is have we paid off our credit card before we buy this particular item. For example, right? You can only lead by example. And I also find that it's it's I would say that once you delve into like the literature of it, there are some theories. There's no hard set rule because humans are complicated, but there's a few theories. They would put humans in sort of two big categories: the saver or the spender. And there are, again, very emotional and different types of money advice that works for both. And if you there's still a problem with paying someone who saves too much, let me just put that out there. There is such a thing as being too stingy, and that will also affect your relationship with people. So people who are like frugal or ultra frugal, I used to be one, it's also a problem. um you might expect like your family to pick up after you or something like that, so don't be ultra stingy as well. But for people who are ultra, ultra spendthrift or ultra spender, you might want to look into, like, it's a self-soothing behavior sometimes.
Mm.
And self-soothe can be a variety of things, including shopping. And you want to get into the root of that. Well, why do they shop? Because of money avoidance. That's another term that we use in the space. Money avoidance makes people like, I don't want to think about credit card. I'm already like, deep, like 10,000 ringgit. What's another 100 ringgit that I'm gonna spend on item X, item Y, right? That's money avoidance. So we talk about it, and by having this kind of money conversations, and I I'm happy to report that I have a bit of that busybody. I love to open these kind of conversations. And when people share online and people talk about their mistakes too, and people talk about like what are the things that trigger them into buying more, for example, then we are a bit more aware, and we can put like, you know okay, maybe on certain dates or certain times I don't go online, or I put my money where I can't touch it, just so that I can stop myself from doing actions X, Y, and Z, right? And maybe I'll just give an example. Like, I would love to take my family for a family trip to Japan. And unfortunately, it's not like the most budget friendly, place to go. And after calculating everything with a baby, like a comfortable, I'm talking about a comfortable trip will be about like 20-30,000 ringgit. And I just be, I haven't put money into SSPN for his education fund. If I do that and I have access, then maybe, but until I've done that, I can't plan for the trip. So I give myself, what do you call it? A bit of like a, if I do X, then and I do Y, then maybe I'll do Z. So instead,
Okay.
because straight away, okay, I'll do Z. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I think different people have different ways of doing it. This is my way of doing it, and other people have amazing ways that they put conditions upon themselves, so it doesn't become like an automatic. Yes, I'll buy. Yes, I'll buy.
So it really is about managing your behavior, right? Understanding how it is that what money triggers in you, how you respond to money, and to manage that behavior is by setting yourself certain goals and limits, and understanding, as you said, your boundaries with money. Really quite fascinating. I'm curious to know, because you talked a little bit in the beginning about how it's important that you are represented as a young Malay woman in the space of personal finance. Personal finance and women, I think, is an area that's really quite interesting, because women really tend to be disproportionately affected by economic downturn, financial crises. We see that we hear so many stories of women being affected by unplanned family life events. You have death in a family, or death of a partner, disease, or divorce, or job, losing a job. All of these things make it underscore how important it is that women have their personal finances in order, or have full control of their personal finances. Well, what steps would you recommend women take to build their financial resilience?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Women tend to be in general, earn less than men. We retire earlier. We stop earning earlier. We tend to withdraw from the workforce in larger numbers than men. And in terms of building financial resilience, I would say that the first step is to absolutely, we use this term just now, money avoidance. I think that you have to get away from the "this won't happen to me" mentality, right?
Ah.
um the my husband won't divorce me, my husband won't leave me, my husband will take care of me financially, my father will be there if anything happens to me. Like this whole "this won't happen to me" mentality is one of the things that in our kind of society, which tend to be a bit patriarchal, where we depend on men to take care of us financially. And if it works out, it works out amazing. But when it doesn't, then we have a bunch of problems, like single mothers and all these other things. And I think that not every woman don't intentionally want all these bad things to happen for them. They just have this money avoidance, again, like "this won't happen to me" mentality. And I think that when you do have that, okay, that's not going to happen to me, I want to invite you, okay, even if it happens to me, I have my plan B to revert back on. And there's this amazing quote that I always keep going back to, and it says, trust in God, but tie your camel. And I always find myself always going back to that quote. So plan B is, it always goes back to that: have savings, or have a dependable income generating skill, or both, right? So have
Mm.
your own savings account. Always know what work or what career you can fall back if needed. Always know or earmark what it is that you have in the house that you can sell if needed. So that's how you build your financial resilience. Just have this, like, in case something happens, that's your plan B, that's what you fall back on. I think that would be like the first ultimate step.
Mm. Are there structural barriers to that, to the fact that, to the reason as to why women are so disproportionately affected by financial downturns? Um, is there anything that you would like to see change in terms of policies, in terms of support systems that can actually create a more equitable future for financial future for women?
Yes. I'm glad you brought this up, Melissa, and it's probably a myriad of reasons, but I would say a big part of that is the fact that women tend to be the gender to withdraw from the labor force in order to do caregiving work,
Mm.
right? And I believe that you probably know of these statistics. Only 55.5% of Malaysian women remains in the labor force, and this is as opposed to Singapore and Thailand, which have much higher numbers. And as you know, when women withdraw from the labor force, they have no income, minimal security net, and it makes things very, very fragile for them, financially speaking. So in terms of policy, broadly speaking, would love to see more support given to caregivers. And we can see this so often. You probably have colleagues, who happen to be in the same situation. Like, women in the workplace get married, have a baby, resign. Women at the workplace have elderly parents, gets unwell, cannot juggle anymore, care work and their work, resign, right? So these caregivers, I note that they can be both women and men, but more often it's women. And unfortunately, when you withdraw, it's not that they don't do work, they just do more unpaid care work. And it is unfortunate because they are the backbone of our economy. In terms of policies, that's so much. People smarter than I am have brought forth so many amazing ideas. So use their suggestions, but some of the ones that I really do like is, of course, affordable childcare option.
Mm.
Ideally, in an ideal world, I want to see that, in workplaces, they set up free or subsidized childcare centers in the same building, right, as the mother or the father. And, imagine if, like, the parents can go to work, leave their child at the childcare center at first floor, go to their work at second floor, and then do their, complete their work day, pick up their child, and then go home. That's amazing. They get
Mm.
all this, like, quality time still. And um you know it gives, that's a that would solve, like, so many known issues already. And I would love also to see longer paternity leave. Now it's paternity leave is 7 days. And aside from the very obvious fact that you know maternity leave is much longer than paternity leave. It makes employers discriminate against women in the workplace. We have people openly saying that, oh, women get 3 months maternity leave. I would rather hire men, right?
Mm.
So in order to reduce this kind of assumptions, why not give, rather than shortening maternity leave, why not giving more paternity leave? And the amazing thing is, fathers also deserve the opportunity to bond with their child. So that's amazing for the family as well. Another thing that I really do like is caregivers. They get more assistance for the retirement, for the insurance, and admittedly there are some initiatives planned for this. For example, I recall EPF Ais Ayang, that's one,
Mm.
right? And Perkeso's housewife social security scheme, right? Those are kind of like initiatives in order to help housewives and also women who are caregivers. But currently they are in an opt-in basis rather than an opt-out basis. So they have to do a lot of marketing, a lot of work in order to tell husbands or families that, hey, there's this ay sayang, why don't you do this? And I last I heard that the take up rate is a little bit low. So again, that it's not that there's nothing. I just
Sure.
wish that there's better ways of putting people in this program so that caregivers are better protected. But again, people have much smarter than me, have way more suggestions. I just would say that more support to caregivers, full stop, is the way to go.
Definitely, Soraya. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really appreciate your time. Soraya Zainuddin, financial activist and founder of the personal finance website ringgit and author of the recently published book Bergaji dan Pokai. That wraps up this episode of The Future is Female. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for this evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.